Hello, everyone. My name is João, and as always, I'm your host. But today, we are accompanied here as a co-host by Felipe. Say hi, Felipe.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Of the foundation, and he will be helping us through this good talk with Kyle. Kyle is the global business lead at Avail, and we are gonna understand a bit about Avail and all their solutions, their DA, Nexus, Fusion, and more importantly, more than that, we're gonna be able to understand a little bit about Kyle's background and history, understand what it takes to become a leader in the Web3 space, right? And gets his insight, his vision in the future, talk a little bit about everything. Hi, Kyle.
And get to know why life is good as well. That's going to
be life is good.
Happy day. Good to see you guys always.
So, Kyle, why is life good?
I guess because I think it is, like, whatever you think it is, it is. Because you could always be bad, it could always be good. But I've got 2 kids, a beautiful wife, been married a long time, got a lot of cool stuff I've done in my life, and I'm just really happy with what I'm doing. So whatever I'm doing, even when it's like in the heat of the pain in the moment, it's just good no matter what.
That's amazing, man. It's just not, it has. Could you give us a little brief on your background, talk a bit about yourself so we get to know you?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I lead the business team at Avail. We're working on data availability and those 2 other products, tackling challenges in Web3 space like fragmentation across all these different roll-ups and chains. I grew up in Southern California, 17 years old, and served around the world for 12 years, doing a ton of different stuff, from working on fighter jets to a political position in Japan to working on operational intelligence and kind of the special operations arena for many years. After the military, I got my MBA here in Houston, Texas, at Rice University. Then I worked at Goldman Sachs for almost 7 years, ending up as a vice president before I gave it all up, took a huge pay cut in life since while I was at Goldman. I started pretty heavily early on in my Goldman career participating in the crypto space since late, in I think the best possible way. So before Avail, I led the global business efforts on the founding team behind the Graph, which is an indexing solution for projects across 40 different chains and many thousands of dApps. And I was there for about 2.5 years.
When are you going to write a book about your history, man? That's a lot of interesting
when I'm
stuff
70
right there.
And hanging out with some iced tea on my porch, yelling at kids.
I mean, record an audiobook when you're doing it as well, because we're going to need it. It's going to be so much more interesting to hear it from your voice. But yeah, you mentioned military. That's not usual for someone to have such a track. Military. I would love to understand the part that military played in your career, how it helped you to shape your personal life and the way you see things, the way you move.
Yeah. Oh, first off, my son's coming in. Hey, Mace, you got to say hello. I'm on a live video chat.
Hello.
So first off, I wouldn't be where I am now without my start in the military. I had 3 kids in a very low income household. My mom often worked like 2 to 3 different jobs. She was out of the house a lot, and I got into a ton of trouble, especially when I was in high school. I barely graduated, so I really didn't have any options or direction in life. So the military actually kind of saved me and taught me how to be a functional human being. And during those 12 years in the military, I found that if I turned all the energy I was spending on self-destruction into productive change. Can we close the door, buddy? Kiss, please. Kiss. I love you. If I turned all that like self-destructive energy into productive things, and if I simply work hard at my job finally, then I could get rewarded. And it seems simple enough, but I didn't think that way as a kid. And the more I worked harder than anyone around me, the more I was recognized, rewarded, and progressed faster. And I finally had found my dopamine source in productive activity. For someone with like severe ADHD like mine that constantly craves dopamine, if you look at the science of it, I guess I found it in achievement, and it's just never stopped. But beyond that, like to answer your question, I boil my learnings down from the military that really still help me today into a few different things. One, I just learned to be really, really comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I just learned to enjoy the suck and the pain of doing hard things and getting through them and looking back, which the military is actually really good for. I learned the ability to adapt to when I eventually hit brick walls in life, like we all do, meaning it feels like you just can't go forward anymore. I either adapted and found a solution, or I simply ran through the brick wall bleeding and just embraced the pain of it and was proud of doing that. And then I learned a lot about downrange back home in my 20s. And those learnings are probably, no matter what, like I'm always at fault and responsible for anyone's actions on my team. So extreme ownership, and I take it super personally, and I'm very hard on myself, less hard on others. So it's always my fault, and which makes me constantly better, putting the hurt on me, and then makes other people more comfortable with failure. And then I'll never ever ask someone to do something that I haven't done or wouldn't or couldn't do myself at any time, no matter how menial the task is. So leading from the front and like taking that metaphorical bullet first if need be. So yeah, long-winded.
I think there's a lot to unpack there. But one thing that caught my attention, and please don't answer it if it's too personal, but you were describing your relationship with dopamine and achievements, and that's super interesting. And I mean, it sounds like a dream world to be in a way addicted to achievements, right? So same thing as like addicted to eating healthy or addicted to studying, you know?
Yeah.
Is there any bad side of associating dopamine with achievement? Or is it only positive for you?
I think it's like me not assigning it. It's just realizing that's what was happening, and kind of studying kind of how my brain works in other folks, learning to adhere to that like biological system. And once I made it, here it is. Once I made it a video game, like because I'm a gamer, I'm a nerd, but once I thought of life as a video game, and I just continually got XP points and leveled up, which means I wanted harder and harder bosses. That's when I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. I just thought of it as a video game. Otherwise, it's life can be boring, I think, if you just see it without seeing how exciting it is and how many levels we get to go after and how many different side quests we have and all that. Again, super nerdy way to put it, but once I looked at life as a video game, then it's like I never want to stop playing. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, this is interesting because I think old times we had a lot of the concept of grind in video games, where you actually had to insist and try so hard to be able to get somewhere, and people are reluctant and refusing the grind nowadays. And I feel that's not just in games, that's in life as well. It happens a lot, right? So it kind of feels like people are trying to flee from the pain and the hardship and the work. But yeah. I think that the whole problem stems from when, agree or disagree with me, I don't know, but when people come with this sensation that it's only worth it when they reach the objective. So they do not learn to appreciate the effort, but only the result, correct?
Yeah, I think that's the opposite way to think about it, because at the end of any video game, it sucks, man. You're like, damn, this sucks. I want to keep playing. And like enjoying the farming of life, like the farming, video game relativity farming is, it's awesome. And just think that like every little side quest is something that's only very exclusive to you, that no one will ever go through in your time, with your brain, with your physical outlook and everything, and your economics, your loot box. It's just so cool. It's just like I think it's very rare to have that mentality and then like enjoy the game while you're playing it. I like the game. I don't care where I'm going, what I'm trying to do. That's like, I have ideas about it, but it's more like I just enjoy the grind and I want more of it. I want more gameplay. I want more game experience.
I love that this is turning into an inspirational podcast for nerds.
This is turning into a video game. It's great. Life is the best RPG, and I really stand by that. The best RPG. I still am not convinced it's not a simulation. So,
I mean, this is a good way to think, because this way you can be the protagonist of your own life always, right? And that's how you should live.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna take a step back and ask about military. Do you have any interesting military stories that you would like to share? Something nice, something sad, something happy? Something
I do,
funny?
but I usually don't talk about the actual stories that much. You know, I deployed to the Middle East. I spent a lot of time because I was a Middle Eastern linguist, and I worked in some hairy places, other places around the world. I lived in Japan for 4 years. I learned multiple languages and just had so many cool adventures. Yeah, so I don't really talk about it too much unless it's like personal, one-on-one over a beer or whiskey. But what's crazy is that was only the first full-fledged adult career so far, which is insane. Yeah, it was forever ago to me.
That's amazing. And then from there, you just transitioned to Wall Street.
Yep.
How did that happen? Where was the jump?
Yeah, so I was in Afghanistan again. Like I was about to re-enlist for another probably 6 years. I would have retired in 2021 at my 20-year mark. But my wife, who was a military veteran, we met and married in Okinawa, Japan. She got her engineering degree right out of college, got an incredible offer at ExxonMobil here in Houston, 12 years ago or so. And she was making, right out of college, much more, almost twice as much as I was making when I was literally leading over 100 people downrange in like war environments, and then over 100 people down back home when I was working 14, 16 hours a day, not only my day job and all these nonprofits I found, all these different things. And I was just like, man, I was gone 7, 8, 9 months a year. I was like, all right, I knew I wanted to be a good dad because I didn't have that experience growing up. And so I was like, I'll choose family over a really, really good military career. And then to make the transition, it was actually like to make the transition from a civilian, because I was 17 when I joined the military. So I was a military guy my entire adult life for 12 years. And I didn't know any different. It was actually tougher than I thought it'd be to transition over. I thought I'd get out and all my skills would be in huge demand and everyone would be like, yeah, I want to hire this cool combat veteran. And but that's just not the case for most veterans. And not a lot of people realize that until they get out. So I'm glad I took 2 years to get my MBA at a great school to give me the time to just learn to be a civilian as an adult. And even after I joined Goldman, like mentally and working on Wall Street, being extremely successful, I did really well. It was still probably 3 or 4 years there where I finally was able to feel this mental shift in my mind. And it was a mental shift from being the military veteran that just happened to work at Goldman, to at some point it shifted to being the Goldman guy that just happened to be the veteran. Or a veteran. So I'm not sure when exactly it happened or why, but I guess that's just the imposter syndrome in a nutshell that we all feel in any transition in life. But for me, going from the military for so long and being kind of, brainwashed, I guess, of that's all that there is, it was really cool to experience that mental shift.
I'm curious, like, how do you compare the transition from military to Wall Street and from Wall Street to Web3? Was it much easier afterwards, or because there's especially in the beginning of crypto, I think there was a little bit of a fight between Wall Street and crypto, right? At least in Brazil, like the Wall Street of Brazil, which is much smaller. They're very anti-crypto in general.
I mean, so military and Wall Street are completely institutionalized roles. And I didn't realize that until I got out of the military, got into Goldman. My wife was at ExxonMobil, big oil and gas shop. And then I got into crypto early on in my Goldman career, and then got super nerdy, not only on the tech, but the philosophy, like the why, the values orientation. And so I started second guessing everything and realizing that everything I was doing, not only do people in every arena of everything from oil and gas to military to politics to Wall Street, no one knows what the fuck they're doing. No one knows, no one has the answers, but everyone pretends they do. And that's scary because they make a lot of decisions that affect the world. And once I got into crypto, it's like everyone was trying to break things to change the world for the better. And so in the military, I had a mission, even though I didn't end up agreeing with it in the end, sadly. And then at Goldman, I had economics, right? I just was all for money. And it was just, you were alone, really just fighting for a bigger wallet than the person next to you. And then when I got into crypto personally, it's like Goldman mentally became my side job. And all I wanted to do was dive into crypto, listen to podcasts, read stuff, tinker with tech, which was a lot of alpha, early on for me and still is. And so I finally had a place where I could have a mission and like a family again, where we're working on the same mission, and the mission's more important than myself, as well as economic upside, which I need to take care of my family. That's the most important thing, not just my kids, my wife, but my whole family. It's really important to me compared to our upbringing. So yeah, it's
just
cool.
A very quick comment. Goldman Sachs is a side job, is a sign of a very successful life, huh? That's
or it's just like a weird mind. I don't know. But I was, it ended up being like, I kind of figured out the military. I knew I saw where I'd get at the highest level at some points. At Goldman, I made it. I just had to do the same thing, and then I just do the same thing to make more money. And that was a boring video game to me. Like when I can see the end of the game while I'm playing it, it's just boring. It's like, all right, I'm on to the next video game. That's more challenging. That's more rewarding. That in the end, like I think of my life as well as just regret avoidance, picturing myself on my deathbed. What do I want to have done? And I reverse engineer it, and going through the simulation of, if I stayed at Goldman for 25 years, even making, a lot of money, I would have been in a really boring video game, and I knew I had to turn it off and buy a different game. So luckily, it's like such a gift that there is this ecosystem that is mission economics, like nerdy tech and economic upside, and it's just like a gift, man. I'm very thankful that at this point in my life, with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge and soft and hard skills, that I get to like jump in and do something that I just love and that challenged me every single day.
Yeah, crypto was sorry, João. Crypto was my industry first industry right after college, and I can't imagine myself doing anything else, because I cannot think of like many other areas in which I'm so much like value aligned, and it's an exciting industry. You actually get to like transform something. Yeah. Sorry, João, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, how do you weight it? How do you decide which is not gonna be your regret? What's the approach you take when making such decisions?
It took me years for each. Like I thought of it years before I left the military, but I never thought I'd do it, because once you're in the military, it's like you're kind of completely dependent on them, with identity, with economics, and you don't really know anything else, especially coming from my background. And at Goldman, like I was making such good money, and it was pretty easy towards the end, that I was like, why would I disrupt this? And then like my wife and I have conversations. We have date night every week, have for 18 years of marriage, whenever we can. So I just kept saying, like, I'm unhappy. I'm not very happy. The people around me were just measuring wallets or other items of their bodies, metaphorically, and it's just like, I don't want to do this. And she was like, then quit. She had a great job. She's a very smart woman. She's an engineer in oil and gas, and not only the ability for us to be financially stable, which through multiple ups and downs and market cycles, we're at least resilient, but also she, I always talk to her about my simulatory brain. I guess that's more an ADD thing or nerdy thing. She was like, your regret avoidance, what are you going to be happy with at the end of your life? So we talked through it many times, and finally, I got the boss's approval, her approval, and then jump ship. Love you, buddy. You gonna juke them on? Close the door, please. Hold on, guys. So my son has my brain. So yeah, he's a fun kid to raise.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
A supportive wife and a fun kid, huh?
Yeah,
Life is good.
I have another cute little 4-year-old girl who might come in. I hope she does, because she's awesome.
That's great, man. It seems life can't get better than this.
Yeah, man.
But
I'm very, very lucky, very grateful and fortunate.
yeah, one thing I was curious about is that when you did these transitions, how did when you transitioned to Web3 finally, right? It was to the graph first, I guess.
Yeah.
And how did your previous experience collaborate? Because you mentioned it was such a huge decision, and then the whole complex that gets to you, which is the sorry, forget the name of it. You mentioned it. Imposter syndrome. And it's a full reset, or do you take something? There is something that you can reuse, something that you can bring to yourself in this change of roles, in this change of charge, in this change of responsibilities.
I think. Well, I mean, the reason I did it was like the concept of anti-fragility, which we were talking about before we started the podcast, right? Made popular by Nassim Taleb's book, which is great. The concept that if you're not constantly stressing a system, then you're not constantly challenging it with something, then it starts deprecating or starts to atrophy. And so I knew I had to like continually disrupt myself. So that's why I was okay with it. And I actually chose the graph very methodically. It's a project I've always respected. I respected the founders and a lot of the team members. And I followed and participated very early on. And when I was deciding between opportunities that I had in hand, when leaving Goldman, I had much, much higher value opportunities than working on the graph. But what attracted me was, most importantly, the values orientation of the founder team, like Yaniv Tal, of decentralizing and a completely decentralized part of the tech stack to make data unbreakable for Web3 applications, and second, to take a like high-level role in a very, very technical project. So it was a challenge for me. And from those things I talked about in the military, like I couldn't test my mettle, my ability to adapt, my ability to run through brick walls, unless I put myself in a very hard situation to see if I could like hack it. I wanted to test my test my technical chops to see if I could do it. While at Goldman, I loved learning about the tech on a granular level, testing things out myself, reading through docs and so on. But I wouldn't really know if I could hack it in the industry unless I joined one of the most technical and highly adopted projects in the industry. So I jumped in, taking a lot less than I could have made at other places that I had offers in hand.
No.
At the graph, over 2.5 years, I led the global business efforts, handling like all the negotiations, relationships, all the DApp relationships across many thousands of projects. I built the cross-chain grant program. I helped lead and build out the revenue generating models to ensure Edge and Node, the founding team behind the graph, was self-sustainable to ensure survivability. And that was everything I wanted. And everything I'd learned up to that point, which is just like never, ever give up on anything. If it's hard, then even more important to keep going when others might fall off and quit. That probably is the most important thing. Grit. There's a book about it called Grit. It's like, if you can, push through the hardest things and continue being creative, and even when it's super boring, you just farm in the video game, eventually you level up. So yeah, I think the original learnings that I had from the military, the leadership, obviously, the sales and relationships I learned at Goldman, all of that translated extremely well to Web3. And then I just needed to learn to survive in a very unstructured startup world, which is also what I wanted to try to do because I was always so institutionalized. And, I did extremely well. And this new version, like I did it very methodically. I chose the team very methodically. And I chose the vertical very methodically for a lot of reasons, what Avail's doing and what the opportunity is to change the Web3 world and how I think it's evolving. So yeah, a lot of good learnings, but in the end, it's less about learnings in the past and more about those key internal values. And more like I just take every punch when it comes. And if I get hit in the face, then I smile and keep going. And I like it. It just builds up scars. It makes me strong.
This is a very Rocky Balboa speech style,
Yeah.
you know? It's about how hard you can get punched and keep staying on your feet.
Yeah, no, I think that's like sums it up. Grit. Yeah.
So the leading, the managing experience all translated well, but the resilience is what sticks the most, right?
Resilience.
Anywhere you go.
Yep. It doesn't matter what you could put me in. I don't care if I know nothing about it now. I've proven to myself, I don't care what others think, but I've proven to myself that in 3 completely different industries, I can start at the bottom as an imposter syndrome person and do well. So drop me in anything. If I fail, I don't even care, but I will, like, it won't be my fault if I fail. I'll literally lay every ounce of energy and creativity on the line. And in the end, if you do that, then you probably might end up succeeding. But it could be survivorship bias, because maybe I don't know.
What's very interesting to me, so I was writing these, I guess, blog posts, trying to articulate to myself and, well, to the readers, I guess, why blockchain is important. So the title of the blog post is Why Blockchain. I haven't finished it. It's a draft. It has been sitting on one of my tabs for like months now. But there's a paragraph specifically about anti-fragility and resilience. Because it feels like we're rebuilding the internet, right? I don't like that analogy that much, but rebuilding the internet in an anti-fragile way and a resilient way. And then I go over and explain why that is. So it's kind of interesting that like anti-fragility is your, I guess, one of your guiding principles in life. And then you ended up in an industry that is all about like removing single points of failure, creating infrastructures that are really resilient, even with attackers having free access, having all the information. Right, we're in an industry that the attackers can read the source code. They can interact with, say, Avail permissionlessly at any time, 24/7. They can do whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
And we're building something to survive that. So sounds like a bit like your life.
Oh, yeah. Like any immune system, any muscle, any economic system, if you're not constantly attacking it and reviewing it and therefore attacking it, then it's going to become fragile, which is happening around the world. And it has happened for a long time. And then people are inevitably taken advantage of or impoverished or disenfranchised if you don't constantly attack something. So crypto is just the embodiment of that guiding principle. I agree. And I love it. It's awesome. We get to disrupt everything.
It's meta-linguistic, the analysis from Felipe. I like it. But yeah, so you commented about Avail, and I'm curious, how did you when you got first involved with it? Mm-hmm. What were the things that drew you to the project, and what was the particular moment? What was the spark in your mind that triggered that change, that desire to work on a more modular space, on this whole different vision?
Yeah, I'd say, well, the graphs ecosystem is dApps, right? It's cross-chain, but it's dApps. That's their world. Indexing and making it available smart contract events for dApps to flow into a front end. And then I heard about the modular thesis, and I didn't know enough about it. So I'm always kind of nerdy, and I find little rabbit holes, and then I obsess over them, and then feel inadequate until I learn enough about them, at least intellectually. And just like when I was at Goldman, same thing with crypto, I felt inadequate, so I had to prove it to myself that I could learn and survive in it. Because doing for me is learning. I learn through doing and failing, little failures. Again, anti-fragility just makes you stronger and smarter. And so when I decided to leave the graph ecosystem, I looked around at what I wanted to build and what I wanted to work on. I guess I'm not a builder per se, but what I wanted to work on. And I knew I wanted to stay in infrastructure and dev tooling because it's super nerdy, especially industry, vertical, and blockchain agnostic dev tooling, which is why I, again, chose the graph, so I could experience every blockchain, get to know everyone, because I'm this uber people person. And then I saw is that and from dApps that I was talking to, it's like a lot of people were thinking of building their own app chain. I said, okay, what's the logical infrastructure that would go that route? And then everyone was talking about how, there's isolation, and I'm a cross-chain degen, so I know like moving assets from one chain to the other to try to do something is such a pain in the ass. And so all of that kind of amalgamated in my mind, if that's the right word. And it's like, all right, people are looking to have more flexibility on their consensus mechanisms, optimizing for security, for speed, and others, which in different consensus mechanisms, whether it's Ethereum, Cosmos, and others, they're really restricted, and they wanted to have more value accrual. And so it did make sense of the modular rollup and modular chain thesis, that people could be super creative. And once I thought of the analogy of the internet literally built out this way, meaning it's not monolithic, it's tens of thousands of microservices that all function together. And you could think of a microservice as a rollup or app chain, a function-specific and vendor-specific chain. And when that was in my mind, it clicked. I was like, all right, I need to go work on this. And so I looked around, I looked at different ecosystems, looked at different infrastructure. And, I knew folks at Eigen, I knew folks at Celestia, I knew folks at other different infra players. But when I saw the true roadmap of what Avail was going to do, that it was, DA was a very important, essential, but just a small part of what that roadmap was, that like gave me goosebumps. It got me excited of the overarching multi-feature, multi-function ecosystem that will like literally help this next evolution of blockchain infrastructure move forward and like support everything. So I knew I'd be able to learn about everything, see all this innovation, see all this failure, and have all that data in my mind. But I think the moment that I wanted to join Avail specifically, besides the tech, was when I was talking to Anurag again. And I was like, Anurag, why the fuck are you doing this to yourself, man? You don't need to work anymore. Because he's co-founder of Polygon, CPO, and I mean, he's very successful. I was like, dude, why are you doing this to yourself? You're older than me. Like, you don't need to do another startup. And he's like, honestly, I don't care about the money. All I care about is impact and doing something important. I was like, fuck it. I want to work with this guy. So that was it. Because I don't like people who just concentrate on money. In this industry, it's very common. And so like that North Star values orientation, money will come, but I want someone who is working for the grind, working for the impact, and working for the journey, which is what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah, seems like a good man to follow and team up with, right? With this value oriented.
Yeah, I love it. He's such a cool nerd. He's like so product focused. He doesn't mince words. He gives super honest feedback, but he doesn't make you feel small while doing it, which I've experienced in the past. And he's just and Brabel too. Brabel's like super nice, but also just a very, very deep thinker. I love working with them, and I respect them and others on the team quite a bit.
That's nice. That's something Cartesi that also makes me so happy, the amount of like smart people around and kind and fun people makes everything much, much better, right?
Yeah, and honest people. I like honest people.
Yeah.
I don't like people who say one thing and then think another. I like people who just say what they're doing or say what they're thinking. We hash it out. We call each other out. Radical honesty. I think Ray Dalio talked about it, radical transparency in his book Principles, and I like that. It helps move things forward faster. It helps me become better faster, and it helps the organization achieve things stronger, faster, and better.
So I think we want to get into Avail, but I've noticed that you mentioned like 4 books already. So I wanted to ask you top 3 books. It seems like you read a lot.
So I again, ADD. I can't sit and read a book unless it's to my son. We read a bunch we've read so many fantasy books, and we're getting into sci-fi. That's the only time I can justify reading a book with my patience level. But I listen to a lot of books, or at least I did when I was driving 1 to 2 hours a day to and from work, from up here in Houston suburbs. So for 9 years I was doing that. But Favorite books are Anti-Fragility, which I already mentioned, Grit by Angela Duckworth, Range, which means the range of things. Doing so many different things makes you better at one thing. And the idea was Tiger Woods only doing golf versus Roger Federer that played a bunch of sports, became the best in tennis. Even though the science isn't great on this one, but Outliers, that mentality of just because you're born with natural talent, it's not about, it's less about that and probably about the luck of your situation. So put yourself in lucky situations and then be there when you have the right skills. I'd say those are 4 that I really love. There's a lot of others, so I can give you a list later. We could talk about it later. I'd say those are my top 4 offhand. I'm sure there are others.
Yeah, I do strongly agree with you. Audiobooks are the way to go. That's why I mentioned you should record an audiobook. For me, it's so much better to simply do it on parallel while I'm doing something else. Otherwise, I do have a very hard time concentrating.
Totally.
Sometimes mine goes all over the place. It's crazy.
Me too. I am literally being recorded live. Watch. Yes, you're on the. What's up, buddy?
Once I finish,
yes, go. Yes, go. Close the door. Door. I love you, son. All right.
This is so awesome.
You're getting a glimpse of my real life. Hopefully, Ellie comes in. Eliana.
Oh no, this is the best thing. I want to make a clip of that. But yeah, one thing that you mentioned was the way you approached how you picked Avail, right?
Yeah.
How do you understand the intrinsities of protocols, the intrinsities of tech when trying to understand concepts that are going on, like modularity? I know besides just reading the thesis, I go straight to the protocols implementations to understand the data flow, how it works, to be able to trust the whole thesis, right? How does that work for you?
For me, I think I'm lower IQ than most folks in the industry. And so I don't get concepts quickly and right away. So like after I left the graph ecosystem, took a while. I had a couple months and I got bored after a couple weeks and I knew I wanted to get into modularity. So I literally and I knew I was interested in Avail and others. So I literally read every single blog. And there's, dozens of blogs and it took a long time. So I'd take a strategy walk, listen to a podcast by Anurag, Brabel, the Celestia team, Mustafa and Ismail, they're very smart, Sriram, and then others in the modular space. So every morning I'd take a strategy walk and listen to a podcast. Then I'd go to the gym, listen to a podcast while I work out. And then I'd sit in the jacuzzi for an hour and a half and read blogs. And then I'd go home and then I'd read blogs and I'd make notes. And I have this huge note document on modularity. So for me, I need to ingest all data, because if I don't have all data, then I know I'm going to fall short. And so I literally read every single Avail blog, heard, I think, every single podcast, and then did the same for other modular ecosystems. And I still do that. Like anything that comes out, I still listen to, try to listen to every Epicenter podcast, which is very technical, from founders, Bell Curve, ZK, all these different podcasts whenever I'm working out or walking or running, whatever. So I just need more data. So that's it. I just overwhelm myself with data, and my mind is so spastic that when I have enough data, I somehow can make sense of it. I kind of thrive in chaos. Some people need quiet thinking. I need like noise. I need more data, and it helps me distill it because I can go through simulations really fast in my brain as long as I have enough data. And the more data is just the better the outcome. Just like any machine learning, I guess.
Yeah, I really don't think low IQ describes what you just described, but I don't know why you mentioned low IQ, but I really don't think it describes what you just said.
We'll agree to disagree.
But yeah, can you walk us a little bit through the Avail structure, the services, the roadmap, how to envision it? How do you, Kyle, envision it impacting the broader blockchain space over the next few years? Your insights?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe to start, in short, Avail's an ecosystem to scale the modular rollup ecosystem and solve the web-free fragmentation issues of, like I mentioned, isolated users and liquidity across all these different rollups, and eventually even for all chains, including layer ones over the long term. Because the traditional internet works because I go to my phone, I've used this analogy, I go to my phone, I order something on Amazon, it connects to the credit card provider, it connects to the distribution center, other supply chain, and all that happens without us realizing it. That doesn't happen in Web3. It would be like, all right, I need a bridge from my phone to actual Amazon. I need a bridge and all those security vectors. And so there's a lot of fragmentation. So Avail is to, again, scale the modular rollup ecosystem and solve the fragmentation of all this isolated gardens that are all over the place. And Avail is doing with a few different functionalities. The first is data availability for modular chains that can outsource data availability, which is the ability to be sure and guaranteed correctness of the transaction ordering of the previous blocks to be able to create the next one. So outsourcing DA to a chain purposefully built to provide that service and massively scalable without the current limitations on blobs, on Ethereum or other settlement layers. We could talk about those, but that's data availability, the first, and that's the base layer, which is really important. And once you have all the information from rollups, as well as really literally every chain, imagine if we downloaded the history of every single chain, every single rollup with anything on it, and its verified state, chain state in the data availability layer, then comes Avail Nexus, because each chain can have a validity proof that verifies everything from that chain, like wallet balances. And Avail Nexus will be the blockchain layer connection of all liquidities, so developers will be able to build business logic on top however they want without the need to worry about traditional mint and burn bridging from a single chain to another single chain. And this will be powered by the validity proofs being aggregated, which is possible, again, when you have all the chain data and the multi-chain data sitting in Avail DA base layer. So imagine you put out an intent. I think intents and proof aggregation are a big part of the future. You're on your one home chain. You say, I want to buy this. You tap into the liquidity of everything. It verifies chain state across an unlimited number of chains, let's say all chains. And it matches up those intents and it just flows back to each wallet in order book matching. As opposed to right now, I'm on a rollup, I bridge to Ethereum, I bridge to one chain, buy something, bridge back to Ethereum, and bridge back just to buy one thing on one other chain. That's not what the future is going to be. So Nexus, I think, will be a big part on the blockchain layer of what kind of this chain abstraction movement, which I call like function and vendor abstraction movement will be. And finally, the biggest trade-off when using an alt DA layer ecosystem and everything it powers is economic security. So Avail Fusion will act as a multi-token security layer where people can natively stake tokens like Bitcoin and wrap Bitcoin assets, ETH and staked ETH assets, and other larger battle-tested tokens, including native rollup tokens for project building on Avail, to increase the economic security. That's the point of it. And you see what staked ETH has done for eigenlayer. Now imagine imagine the power of doing that with Bitcoin, ETH, and wrapped and staked assets there. Other higher battle-tested market cap tokens and their restaked versions. It's going to be really, really powerful to mitigate the concerns of economic security. So I hope that was a somewhat good summary. Happy to dive down on anything if you're interested.
No, that's super nice. I think a lot of people know Avail just because data availability, but it's nice to see the much more ambitious goals, right?
Yeah, data availability is essential, but it is actually probably going to be a smaller part of the overall vision. Nexus, could unify every single chain. And imagine those are just chains. I'd say when, but maybe if we created SDK for dApps. What if a dApp could launch on just one chain and use the Nexus SDK to connect to every single other chain? And I know how hard it is for dApps to go across multiple chains, have subgraphs for multiple chains, and so on. So it's it could really change the game of the developer experience and therefore the end user experience.
Solving interoperability all at once.
in a different method, but it'll be one part of a multi-chain abstraction interoperability stack where there's universal accounts on the app layer, where it's abstracted on the wallet layer. There'll be like orchestration for multi-transaction, so the business logic, kind of like the agoric orchestration. And then there's the blockchain layer, which is where Nexus is, which is the most fun part for me to work on.
Oh, so Nexus is probably your preferred solution between everything that Avail proposes?
No, I think they're all awesome, but DA is absolutely essential because without everything in a common base layer and chain state verification, coming to consensus, transaction ordering, chain states, validity proofs created, and aggregating those, then it's not possible. Nexus isn't possible. So proof aggregation isn't possible unless you have chains specifically pushing information. But on Avail, we can pull information. People don't, they could be building on any DA layer, they could be building on any chain eventually, and we could just pull that information to Avail DA, and then it gets wrapped up into Nexus. So they're inextricably linked.
I see.
That's the right way to put it.
I get a little confused about Fusion and what's the role Fusion plays after Nexus. It feels like it's something to add on top of. How is the critical need that you see for Fusion?
I'd say a couple things. One is economic security. We need to increase economic security. And two, you look at what AVSs have done to solve the cold start problem. Think of Fusion as that, but a VM agnostic system. So you'll be able to have validated services on Fusion in a much more flexible and agnostic way. So yeah, think of what AVSs have done to speed up building. People will be able to do that on Avail Fusion. That's a good allegory, I guess.
I like it. I really do. Okay. And in this new vision, in this whole structure, I would want to understand a little bit more once again about Kyle, and what is your role in BD in all of that? What part do you play in the construction of the solution and this whole creation?
So tech is absolutely important, but tech can do very little without distribution, without bootstrapping and dogfooding usage, without getting boots on the ground feedback from projects across the space to help inform the product roadmap so you're not building in a vacuum, a mental vacuum, to help build incentive and grant programs like I've done in the past, to form channel and infrastructure partnerships for distribution. So it's not just our team that's talking about Avail, it's us teaming up together with Cartesi so that you all know what the power of Avail is. Same thing, I know what the power of Cartesi is, and we're pushing just really cool ideas and tech together, as well as to help spread the word across the globe to technical and non-technical minds. So I'm leading all of that. It's a super big challenge. I love it, and I'm just so grateful for the video game level. So yeah, it's all that, as well as thinking through product as well, being creative and just challenging myself technically and socially.
Do you mostly interact with Web3 projects, or do you sometimes try to convince some Web2 companies to join in the space to use Avail? And how is that? How is the experience there?
I think the past 3.5 years has always been similar, whether it was dApps on the graph or modular infrastructure here, that the majority right now, because there's only a few 100,000 Web3 developers around the world, and the majority of early adoption is Web3 developers. I have and do speak with TradFi, Web2, and other people, not only from my previous network, but just to kind of red pill them. But it's difficult. Big brand name folks didn't even want to use the graph, like Web2 and TradFi. They liked what it did. So I think at this point, most of it is Web3 actual adoption, but I'm still talking to many of the biggest brand name folks from Web2, TradFi. So I think they'll come eventually. Like when I was at Goldman, I always was a nerd and like knocking down the door of the digital assets team, which 2 of the 5 folks that were there are now founders and leaders of Ondo Finance in RWA. And those 5 people are gone. But back then, even less than a decade ago, there were only 5 people, I think, on that team. Now there's 70 or 80. So that's a move in the right direction. JP Morgan has probably 10x, 20x their team. I know other big brand names, even outside of finance, which is obviously the best product market fit in the space, that are growing their teams, and that is bullish for the industry. So they're paying attention, but when you have such a large moving ship that is so heavily regulated and disincentivized to try new things, to innovate, it's going to take a while. So our purpose, my purpose in life, let's say it with regards to them, is just like be so good, be so disruptive that they can't ignore you, because it's only then when they'll really start doing it.
Picking up on this last question about people from Web 2 and Web 3, what is the way that you see the difference between working from people that were in Web 2, the guys from military, sorry, not Web 2, the guys from military, then the guys from banking, then people from Web 2, and then to degens in Web 3? What is the difference and the way all these people deal with you?
You mean their personalities or how they deal with me?
Both. Their personalities, how they deal with work, and then how they deal with you.
Yeah, I'd say there are a lot of similarities, but there are very few key differences, probably. Similarities are, everyone's trying to work hard. Everyone who succeeds has grit and all that stuff we've talked about. The dissimilarities are that people in crypto are not afraid to try something that's never been tried. They're not afraid to innovate, truly innovate something that no one's ever thought of. And that means they're not afraid to fail. And that leads to anti-fragility, because I think failure, the amount of failure, is a good leading indicator to success. Like Thomas Edison, how many inventions he had before he had the light bulb, or whatever it may be. So I like that. The more simulations you have, the more likely you are to get to the best outcome. If you only go through 5 simulations to get to this same goal, and thousands of people are doing it, millions of people, then you're never really going to have innovation. So that's the biggest thing, I think, off the top of my head, is we're not afraid to fail. And if we fail, it's still one fucking hell of a ride, but and a great story to tell to our kids, even to ourselves. But yeah, we just go break stuff and try new things, as opposed to just trusting the elders of the industry and saying it needs to be done this way. Young people come up and say, no, you're wrong. I'm going to fork your code and make it better, or build something completely new, which I love. That's the power of open source as well. You just innovate so much more faster, and that's the best leading indicator to survivability, thrivability, and success.
Definitely. Okay, Kyle, we have this little game here. It's called Rapid Fire Round. So I'm going to throw at you some questions, like 7 questions probably, and you have to answer them barely thinking. 1-word answers real fast, at max 1 sentence. Ping pong, all right?
So you're ping pong, or we're going back and forth?
No. I'm gonna throw you a question, and you just.
And then I throw it back. Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
It's ping and pong. No back and forth.
Got it.
Okay, so choose 1 word to describe Avail.
Future-proof with the hyphen.
If you could be an animal, what would that be?
Say it again.
If you could be an animal, what would that be?
Falcon.
Falcon, nice. 1 word, 1 Web3 protocol you really like.
That's a trap. I won't play favorites. Everyone who's building with integrity is on my cool list.
Fair. Fair. What was your favorite crypto event that you went to?
The DevCon.
Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Espresso.
Which crypto topic makes you zone out?
Shillers, aka Moon Boys.
All right. Now shout out to one person that has inspired you.
Mom. I love you, honey. Love you, Mace. Yeah, Mom, who's right there taking the kids out right now.
This is amazing. Okay. So thank you for that. We're moving to our next session.
Awesome.
And we would really like to talk to you about partnerships. So partnerships in Web3 seem like a unique beast, how you go about forming them in such a decentralized world, and what have been some of your more interesting experiences in this whole ecosystem and partnerships and ways you approach things?
So I think like BD, business and partnerships, at least for me, I think I'm fairly successful at it because I just really enjoy meeting new people. And then since I'm a people pleaser, because I'm a bit anxious and insecure, it makes me want to bend over backwards for every single person I meet, to add value to every single person I meet, whether or not they can add value to me. And that accumulation of, let's say, I don't really think of it, but it's like alternative XP of just like friendship points and relationship capital. That's a good way to put it. Relationship capital. Even though I don't like keep score, it doesn't matter to me. I think it just can be summed up as if I'm nice to people, everyone, then eventually, people will want to be nice to me and help me no matter what. Because when people are zero sum, like they're only extractive, like those are the people I don't want to be around. And those are the people I probably won't help. But when people just want to like build things and work together, even if they're like competitive people in different protocols, if you just want to help people, then I think in the end, I don't believe in karma or all this universal stuff, but I do believe that if you're nice to and kind to people, or helpful, then people will be helpful to you. So that's partnerships in a nutshell to me. Like every person I meet, if I can, across any protocol in Web3 or not, I try to take calls as much as possible, though I need to like filter because there's only so many calls I can take in a day. But whenever I meet somebody, it's like, what can I do to help you? And that has paid more dividends than any technical explanation I can give to like other people in the industry. So yeah, that's kind of why I've always been fairly good at, I guess, sales in a way, whether at Goldman or here, regardless of what the mission is, regardless of what the product is. I just like freaking helping people. It just gives me a lot of joy, and I genuinely love it. And I think that resonates with folks. So I don't know if you also asked about experiences. I'm so spastic in my brain that I couldn't even think of, off the cuff of my brain, think of different experiences. But yeah, that's it. Just my philosophy, be kind, and people will help you in the end. And it'll serve you better in the long run.
I think this podcast is full of life lessons, man. And I really I have to say this, I really appreciate how like radically honest you are and transparent, and like you're opening up, saying that you're insecure and like a people pleaser and so on. I think the world would be much better if everyone was that honest with themselves as well. Not only like opening up and like telling people about your vulnerabilities, but like accepting them within yourself, right? And I really respect that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm older though too, so I'm over the hill. So I don't know, but yeah, it's made me a lot more happy because I've always was very anxious growing up, and yeah, it's made me a lot more happy accepting my faults and like ADHD. I really hated it growing up, but I realized that it's such a superpower, and I embrace it now. Like no one can think super fast and like literally do 20 things at once and survive, but I also can't think as well as a lot of people, and that's okay with me. It's like, whatever.
The capacity of context change is amazing, right?
Yeah.
You change the contexts as if it was nothing, because you're used to that all the time.
Yeah, because my brain is like an explosion of ideas every second, even when it's silent in the room. Yeah, which, yeah, it's a gift and a curse. It's a curse for my wife. It's a gift for me.
Love it. All right. Now, one last question I have for you is, I want to know what excites you the most about the future of Web3? And what challenges do you think we, as a community, still have to overcome?
What excites me most? What excites me most is that we're still so early and it's such a small community, and we all get to be a part of it, of all this innovation and failure. And I'd say when, not if it succeeds 20, 30 years down the road, when it truly takes over things and disrupts, we'd be like, man, you remember when we were early on and we were like essential founders of this industry, even if we weren't, the Vitalics. That is the most exciting thing to me personally. For the world, it's making the world anti-fragile. The finance system, the transparency, which you see in media and corporations, government, it's becoming. It has always been bad, and it's really a big fragile aspect of this world that I think is hurting a lot of people, and then therefore used to control a lot of people. Like there's finally something for the first time ever in the history of the human species that can disrupt that. This technology can do that, and we get to work on that. Even if it fails, even if all this fails, my life spent on this is like a life worth living. And then the second question was, I can't remember.
The second question was, what challenges do you think we as a community still need to overcome?
Yeah, I still think we need to work better together, more collaboration versus straight competition and PvP. We're 5 years ago, ZK was only done in academic circles at colleges. Now it's literally like something we're all just tinkering with in our homes. And so that we're moving in the right direction, open source and so on, but it's so PvP and clout measuring that I think we'll be able to get over that long term. I think we're moving in the right direction. And then infrastructure still has a way to go, to get to the point where, even though I think really good dApps can be made right now, to get to the point where gaming truly takes over, I think we still have a long way for infrastructure. We just need to keep building stuff, because when infrastructure is better, dev tooling's better, more application software developers come in, and then more users come in because those applications come. And so we need more creative brains that either translate stuff from Web 2 and TradFi, but also some, just very creative, off-the-cuff app developers. So I think we have a long way to go, to be honest. But that's what's exciting, because, again, if I saw the end, if we already succeeded, like, fuck, right, now I got to find another industry. Because I'd be bored, and I'm not bored. And I think it's such a gift.
Yeah. Kyle, this was amazing, man. We reached already 1 hour and 5 minutes. So
Yeah, we did.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to wrap up, but thank you so much for your participation. This was really, really awesome. We have one question from Unlonely, if you would take it from the community.
Yeah.
Which is, let me paste it here so you can read it as well. So I recently had accepted that I have ADHD, and I say this because I know things. I say this because I know things to be done, but get easily distracted. I'm not a fan of taking note or using a written note system, and all. But I really do want to beat this. How are you able to turn this around for yourself?
I stopped seeing it as an enemy, and I started seeing it as a friend, and adapted my life to my brain. because I can't change my brain. I could take stimulants, I could take different things, but in the end, my brain's my brain. And so I read some books on how people perform and succeed in the real world, or just you could research online. And for me, because I'm so forgetful, because 1,000 things, the explosions of my mind, I literally just make checklists. Checklists are my best friend because I have so many ideas. And then if I don't do it immediately or I don't write it down, then it's gone. And it can be really good. So I literally just note what I'm doing. I always set Slack reminders because if I don't, then I'll literally never think of it again until 2 weeks later when somebody asks why I didn't do it. So checklists is what I do. Yeah, checklists. And I actually take notes on calls while I'm doing stuff. And that only helps me because I remember now. But still, I won't do anything if I don't have checklists. And because of my dopamine, as I check those things off, it gives me so much joy. It's like, yes, another enemy down on my video game of life. So but you just gotta stop. Well, I'm not trying to give you advice or anything like that because I'm no one to give advice, but I became more powerful myself when I stopped trying to beat it and then learned how to use it and adapted my life to it, which I think that's probably anyone. You can't change who you are, can't change how you look, can't change anything except for what you do with every single minute of every day.
All right.
Wow.
Deep. Strong.
Damn, sorry guys, didn't mean to get so deep.
No, I love it.
Episode's kicking in now.
What I was thinking, it's so amazing that we're having like a podcast about crypto and about you and about Avail.
Yeah.
And you're just like helping someone deal with like how their brain works for them, right? And that's the power of being honest about yourself and about like the challenges that you had to overcome, is that it can inspire others and help others deal with some similar situations, right?
Yeah, I feel the pain. But it was good talking to you guys. Thanks for going over. I always love working with you and love hanging out. So yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle. It was amazing to have you.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, guys. This was I Built Their 4 a.m. So keep building and pioneering the world of Web3. Don't forget to follow us on our Twitter, YouTube, Discord, also Avail, also Kyle. Thank you very much for the participation here. And yeah, if you want to say any last message, floor is yours, Kyle.
Life is good. That's it.
Life's good. Bye-bye, guys.
Later.
Peace.